Welcome to the Essence of Homeschooling podcast, brought to you by the umbrella school, Start Academy. We empower and equip you to cultivate the authentic homeschool lifestyle where freedom and relationships rule.
Well, let's move on to myth number 3, which is homeschooling parents lack qualifications to homeschool and therefore the academic rigor suffers. What would you say to that, Michelle?
I think the first thing I would say is who loves your children more than you do? And do you want your child to succeed? Are you willing to do what it takes to help your child succeed? I know that's kind of a easy answer in a way, but it's the truth of it is when children are in a classroom of 20 plus kids, even if they have the best teacher in the world, how do you focus the individual attention on all 20? And so homeschooling is just a different environment. And in all reality, home education has been around forever. Many famous men and women from history, as well as current business people, athletes, musicians, and actors, received a home education. It's actually interesting to note the evolution of education through this. The first formal public education in America was not run by the government. It was a Latin school started by the Puritans in 1625 to prepare boys for college. Other than Massachusetts mandating formal education in 1852, formal education was not even mandatory until after the Civil War and as late as 1915 in the continental US. It was 1929 in Alaska. So, really, we've only seen the public school system in most of the US for less than 110 years. And we've only seen the rise of what I will call modern homeschooling, the modern homeschooling movement in the last 50 years. So, they're both quite new. And historically speaking, the newer form of education is actually the public school over homeschooling. But I think the possible reason this myth comes about is that homeschooling is not something that we had the numbers for a long time to prove its effectiveness. And it's also not something that is controlled by the government. It is actually controlled by individual families. It is controlled by their budget, it is controlled by their abilities. But even with that being said, being controlled by their budget and their abilities, there's also plenty of research that shows that the education level of a parent does not define the ceiling for the child. So now with all the studies that are out now, because homeschooling is coming under question and the validity is being tested, the studies are showing that homeschoolers actually do quite well. And I'll get to that in a second because I just realized I um, wanted to say something about there is a study. I mentioned that the level of education for a parent does not make the ceiling for a child. But we also know there are studies out there that show a correlation between a parent's college degree and their children attending and succeeding in college. But even they will admit that that is not the biggest factor of success. So the factor of success that all these studies point to is parental involvement. And that's really across the board, whether they're homeschooled or whether they're in school. It doesn't matter. If the parent is involved, the child has a greater opportunity to succeed and greater likelihood of succeeding. One of those studies states that students with involved parents, regardless of family income or background, are more likely to earn higher grades and test scores, attend school and pass their classes, develop better social skills, graduate from high school, attend college, and find productive work. And I should just say, I'll make sure these places where I got these statistics are noted in the show notes. We could claim that we could claim that one cannot get any more involved in their kid's education than a homeschooling parent. We also know that it takes more than a parent being present. So the parent has to actually be committed to educating and willing to put into the hard work. And we said this on the socialization piece and on the enrichment piece is it takes purpose. It takes planning, it takes intentionality to make sure these things happen. And like you mentioned in all those options for extracurricular, Stacy, some of those even were educational. A lot of them were. And it's how do we do this together and with the resources that are outside of us? But I think the other piece of this is it's important to understand that homeschooling is different than institutional schools. The methods are not the same. It's not apples and oranges. It's more like one on one tutoring than it is a classroom. Without 20 other kids competing for attention and help, homeschooling allows for more time focused on academics and, of course, socialization and extracurricular, right? It's balancing those and it's tailored to the needs, skills, and abilities of each child. It allows the child to learn at their own pace without being held back or being embarrassed for not understanding. In my case, it allowed me to continue moving one child forward past their grade level just because they were ready, but there was no one they were comparing themselves to. They just knew they were doing the next thing. They had no idea they moved up a grade in the middle of 3rd grade or whatever it was, I don't know. There is a great deal of rigor in home education, and sometimes academics raised to such the standard that there may be too much rigor, if that makes sense. It really depends on the family. And so it's learning how to balance each of these. And we all know cases where there's not enough rigor. So again, it's balance, it's purpose, it's intentionality. But the statistics actually show that homeschoolers score significantly better than their public schooled peers on standardized testing, from 15 to 25 percentile points above. They also, on average, score higher on their SAT and ACT tests. So if we look at the averages, we can say homeschooling is very successful. It is giving the children the academics they need, and not just the academics, but the ability to interact, to progress, and to become employable. So all of that matters, but the real point is what is the parent doing in the home? And I think in the end, just like the socialization piece and the extracurricular, the debunking of this myth comes one on one with individual families interacting, individual homeschool families interacting with other families to show that their kids learn, they grow, they flourish outside the home and they can go on to college, military, or the workforce really pretty seamlessly.
I think this myth, like you just said, falls right in line with the first two, social skills and extracurriculars, in that the questioning of parental qualifications and academic rigor might come from those who don't understand homeschooling. It might be new to them. They might not fully know what it means. Because if you just think homeschooling, well, you're at home, you don't do anything. The parent might not have a college degree. They can't possibly be teaching. Then I could see how you could say they can't possibly be teaching. They don't ever leave the home. They don't ever get to do sports. But that's based in not knowing the true nature of homeschooling. So I could see how these three myths all come together from a lack of information
Mhm.
versus once you start diving into the world of homeschooling, if you start doing the research that you're talking about, you'll see the true numbers and the true look at what homeschooling is. I'm really glad you brought up those studies because that will provide information for people who might not know what the true nature of homeschooling is.
Right. And it's a hard one because I do remember I do have a bachelor's degree, and it's not in education, but when we know how to learn, we can teach another how to learn. And that, I think, is the strongest qualification other than the love of our children, the love we have for our children, because we want them to succeed. I remember in one area I lived, I was wary to say I homeschooled because the common question was, well, what makes you qualified to do that? I was like, well, certainly I can do elementary school. And I think at this time I was like, I can handle kindergarten. But it is that delicate balance because you want to honor the intelligence of other people who have studied and worked hard. And I have friends who are teachers, and there's plenty I can learn from them and do learn and apply to my own kids' home education. So it's that delicate balance of honoring intelligence and honoring diligence and hard work, but also honoring the deep love parents have for their children. But again, it has to be that sacrificial love to be able to spend time, energy, sometimes money on what your kids need. And the beauty is, especially starting early, starting in elementary school, is you find you are learning along with them. And when they see you excited about learning something you didn't know, it lights up in them as well. So we're always learning. I think that's the other thing too is education doesn't stop after 12th grade or secondary school. We're learning for the rest of our lives, even social skills, we're learning for the rest of our lives, right? All of this is always coming, but it is a very purposeful thing.
Are you looking for a supportive community to walk with you through your homeschooling journey? Look no further. Start Academy is your go-to umbrella school for fulfilling legal reporting requirements in Colorado. But what if you don't live in Colorado? We still serve you through our support tools and services. At Start Academy, we're not just another institution. We're your partners in education, providing comprehensive support services designed to empower, encourage, and equip you to be the best homeschool parent that your children deserve. Teacher and student IDs, parent and professional evaluations, attendance logs, record-keeping services, DIY high school transcripts, or our official homeschool high school transcript service produces personalized transcripts that highlight your students' unique accomplishments. High school diplomas celebrate your family's achievement when you successfully complete the adventure. Additionally, our experienced homeschool coaches provide one-on-one support throughout your journey. Custom tailor your homeschool support system by selecting one of our 3 enrollment packages based on your family's needs. This way, you can get exactly what you need to make the most of your homeschooling experience. We come alongside you in the way you want to be supported, whether that's the bare minimum or holding your hand each step of the way. The Umbrella School Start Academy provides what you want the way you want it. So why wait? Enroll with Start Academy today and unlock a world of possibilities for your homeschooling journey. Go to theumbrellaschool.com to learn more and sign up. We can't wait to serve your family.
So, and I know one of the concerns with this is, can the academic rigor be enough to get our children into college? And Stacy, I know you work a lot on the transcripts for Statheros and for people to help their kids get into college. What have you found about this fourth myth that homeschoolers, the myths stating that the idea is homeschoolers have trouble getting into into colleges or the military?
Yes, this is a persistent myth that continues to shadow homeschoolers, that they face hurdles. when applying to colleges and universities. I think this myth, probably like all of them, might have some roots in the past. Maybe when homeschooling first became legal, colleges maybe did not know what to do with homeschoolers just because they didn't have that history and that knowledge of what it is. But we are, I believe, as you said earlier, 50 years into this new paradigm where homeschooling is not only legal, it is generally accepted. And now we're approaching the time where it's actually viewed as a positive to colleges and universities. Contrary to popular belief, and I think you hit this on the last myth as well, Michelle, homeschooling often equips students with a robust academic foundation that makes them frequently outperform their traditionally schooled peers on standardized tests like the SAT and the ACT. It also fosters critical thinking skills, self motivation, and independence, which are all qualities highly valued by colleges, universities, and the military. Another point is that homeschoolers are not limited by the constraints of public school or private school in traditional grading systems. Homeschoolers have the freedom to explore diverse learning experiences, as we've talked about, pursue internships, engage in significant community service projects, and participate in all the extracurricular activities that we've discussed. This is more of a holistic approach to education, which creates a more well rounded student. And they have a breadth of experiences, making them, again, attractive candidate to colleges, universities, and the military. In addition, colleges and universities are increasingly recognizing the unique strengths and qualities of homeschoolers and are starting to actively recruit homeschoolers for their diversity of perspectives, their innovative thinking, and their strong work ethic. Admissions officers value the initiative and self directed learning skills that homeschoolers have. Quite a few admissions officers believe that homeschooled students are more motivated, intellectually curious, and capable of thriving in a collegiate environment, which I think leads back to what you were just talking about. They know how to learn and they love to learn.
They do love to learn. It's funny to hear different kids come back from college. These are friends' kids, but they're like, I had so much fun in class, but I looked around and other people were bored and it was disappointing. It's that love to
That's so
learn
cute.
piece is important.
Yes, it's very important because we can force our kids to go to traditional school, go to homeschool, and sit there all day, but that's not learning either way. Yeah. So, like you were saying, the parental involvement, the parental learning along with them, showing them our love of learning shows them what it's like to love that. And most homeschoolers, not all, but most homeschoolers really do love to learn.
Mhm.
In addition, as we've already discussed, homeschooling families have access to a wealth of resources and support networks designed to assist with the college application process. They don't have access to the traditional guidance counselor at their institutional school. However, they do have access to individual guidance counselors, whether it's in a co op, an enrichment program, an umbrella school, or someone that parents have paid to help with the guidance process, the applying for colleges, writing the essays, figuring out what classes they need to take, making sure their transcript is robust and meets the criteria of whatever colleges they're interested in. They do have access to those types of resources. In addition, homeschoolers can use standardized testing centers, online courses, and other community based organizations that offer college prep workshops and seminars. I did come across one peer reviewed article published in the Journal of College Admission in 2010 entitled Exploring Academic Outcomes of Homeschooled Students by Michael Coggin. And he examined the academic outcomes of homeschooled students who entered a medium sized institution located in the Midwest. The study analysis reveals that homeschool students possess higher ACT scores, higher GPAs, and a higher graduation rate when compared to traditionally educated students. In addition, multiple regression analysis results reveal that students who are homeschooled earn higher first year and full GPAs. when controlling for demographic, pre college engagement, and first term academic factors. So I think the conclusion to this myth is that you can and should maximize your students' chances of acceptance to a college or university by visiting college websites, understand what colleges and universities require of their first year students, make sure your students get those classes, they have the credits, they have the specific classes needed, and then tailor your education in high school to be college ready. Most kids don't know in ninth grade where they want to go to college, and that's fine. But if you think at all that your student wants to go to college, it is in their best interest to have a college prep high school focus where you make sure you have the necessities, usually for English, for math, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot more information we could go into on being college ready. But the point of dispelling this myth is that colleges do want homeschoolers. They want focused and motivated students who love learning. And homeschooled applicants are generally welcome at post secondary schools.
Have you had any experience with scholarships? How do homeschoolers are they eligible for scholarships as well?
Yes, most scholarships are given by private organizations. My oldest, as you said, just graduated high school, and we joined a program that worked with us from September through May of her high school year. Every month, the program put out a list of scholarships to apply for. And this list, although it was large, was just a small number of the scholarships out there. And so all this takes is parents or the students, because by this point, the student should be heavily invested in their education and preparing for college and knowing how much college costs so they can value the learning. All it takes is research. Google scholarships for, and you can put in demographics, whether it's gender based, whether it is where you live, your nationality, whether it's you're a first year college, you're the first in your family to go to college, whether it's an institution your parents went to. There are scholarships, you name it, there are scholarships for it. My daughter has applied for a wide range of scholarships. Some require essays, some don't. Some are full tuition all 4 years, some are $500. They run the gamut. I will say that her senior year, we invested a lot of time in applying for scholarships. And sometimes it feels that it's not worth it because the amount of students applying for scholarships is large and the number of scholarships is small. However, now that I've done it, I know more what I'm doing and what scholarships are more likely to be given out, meaning the $500 to $2,000 scholarships. A lot of people say, oh, I'm not going to bother with that. I want the $40,000 scholarship. But of course, the percentage of people applying for the $40,000 scholarship is way more than the people applying for the $1,000 scholarship. So I think we could have a whole podcast on scholarships and college admissions and all of that. Yes, we probably could. But they are available to homeschoolers, just like public school and traditionally schooled students. I think we came across one scholarship all year that she could not apply for because they specifically needed a public school guidance counselor's recommendation. Just one.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. We could do a whole thing on college and scholarships, admittance, but
definitely.
you're
And how
right.
scholarships affect your financial aid.
Right, right. But not all kids are going to go to college. And that doesn't mean we don't continue the same academic rigor. I'll just say a little piece about the military because that is another option kids do, or they head into the workforce. And so all of the teaching that we have done through their 12 years of education in the home is transferable into the workforce. It can be used there. It also makes them competitive in the military. You mentioned something about internships. I have one daughter who's done an internship with a air flight club. I have to enunciate flight. It's not a fight club, but through that, she's learned not only has she gotten her private pilot's license by working for it, right? But she's also learned the mechanics of the plane and been able to work on repairing planes. So that internship is a highly transferable skill. And as far as the military goes, still many of the same things of preparing your child for college. You still need a high school diploma, you still need a transcript. You also need to verify that you have followed the homeschool laws within your state. HSLDA actually recommends not going the route of a GED or distance learning diploma. I am not sure their reasonings behind that. But if you're homeschooling your kids, all of us in Statheros would say, please give them a diploma. Please write them a transcript. You actually do them a disservice by making them take the GED. Not always, but because a diploma and a transcript prove that education has happened. Not that the test doesn't, it is socially looked at differently. And I think that's part of it. From our personal experience, we had zero complications with our oldest going into the military. He chose to enlist at the age of 17. So we actually, as his parents, had to sign him over to the Marine Corps because one cannot do it on their own until they are 18. But please remember with the military, they still have to pass a physical fitness test and a medical physical, just like all recruits. Everybody has to do that in the military. And in reality, don't we want that? The skills he learned at home in knowing how to learn, how to persevere, how to respect authority and accept responsibility, and even a few basics in sewing on a button helped him do well in the military. So whether it's heading into the military, straight out of high school, going for a military academy or ROTC, all those basics are still required. If it's a military academy, the SAT and ACT scores are very important. Think of it as an Ivy League college in a lot of ways. You need a rigorous course of study with detailed class descriptions. But the other thing for the academies is you need an appointment from a senator, a congressperson, or even the president. So they are preparing in advance for that course for their life, what they want to do. ROTC does not require an appointment, but those ACT and SAT scores are still important. So, really, it's not the issue of homeschooling that prevents a young man or woman from entering the military academies or even the military. It's just the competition for the academies that may prevent them, just like what we were talking about scholarships and colleges. It's not the homeschooling that gets in the way anymore. It's the reality of competition.
Across the board for all post high school opportunities, I think, from
Mhm.
employment, like you're saying, to the military to colleges. Yes. And you can help your child, as you're saying, by being thorough, having academic rigor, knowing what the end goal is, and working towards it. I'm sure your son had to take the ASVAB
Yes.
in order to. Mhm. So if you didn't know what the ASVAB was and you didn't prepare him for it, that would have been harder for him probably.
Right, and I think we took a different take with tests is that while they're valuable, they don't define you, and
Mhm.
for him, the ASVAB was more, "Hey, let's explore what I wanna do. What am I capable of doing in the military?" And the higher you score, the more choices you have, because you have to score at certain levels in order to do certain positions.
Yes, and so you're instilling the love of learning in him from a young age, showed on his ASVAB. Even though you don't teach to the test, we don't like to do that. It's more of a lifestyle
Yeah,
of learning.
and that's with all of these.
Mhm. And what a gift to him to go into the ASVAB with that mentality. Let me explore what I can do. Let me learn. This is exciting. Instead of going in saying, I really want to join the Marine Corps, but I don't think I'm going to get the right score. And I'm stressed about the test and what happens if I fail. What a gift you gave him.
Well, thank you. I don't think we did it consciously. It was one of those things sometimes you stumble your way into. And as the firstborn,
Yes.
we stumbled our way into a lot of things with him. But
Yes. Let's hope our firstborns don't listen to this, right?
right, he'll laugh at me.
Just kidding.
But that's so funny. Well, so each of the myths we have mentioned, while they are valid and we need to be aware of them because we need to understand the importance of overcoming them in how we educate our children and interact with others. Hopefully, through the discussion Stacy and I have had, it gives you some information, confidence, and ideas that you will find useful. As I've said throughout the podcast, I believe the real debunking of the myths comes in how we, each one of us individually, choose to educate our children, what we require of them, and what we do to help them succeed, how we prepare them for living in the world outside our home. Others are watching. But more importantly, the real issue in all of this is our children are counting on us to show our love for them in doing the best we can to teach them the value of learning, to enjoy exploring the gifts God has given them, and how to set their sights on using those gifts to make a difference in the world. Our time with them is short, even when the days feel long, but the adventure and the effort and the energy is all worth it.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. Be sure to check out today's show notes for all applicable links and additional resources. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring you great content. Until next time, happy homeschooling.